In a quiet corner of the galaxy, far away from human worlds, a small alien colony floated around a dying star. Its skies were always gray, and the buildings were falling apart. The people who lived there didn't talk much, didn't laugh, and didn't care for anyone outside their own kind. They had forgotten what hope felt like. But someone in that lonely place was still holding on to it. Her name was Kalira, a young alien girl with soft violet skin and bright glowing eyes. She used to fly, dance, and run across the energy fields of her planet. Now, she could not move her legs at all. A strange accident had taken her ability to walk, and the people of her colony saw her as broken. They believed she was useless, a shadow of her former self. Kalira lived alone in a cold room filled with old alien machines. Every day, she stared at the stars and wondered if anyone, anywhere, could help her. Her voice was not strong, but her will was. So she did something her kind would never dare. She sent a distress signal into space. Just one message, in basic language, repeating over and over again. "Help me, please, I need a healer. Anyone who can listen. I don't want to die like this." No one on her planet knew. No one cared, and no one answered, until one day, on a small research station floating near Saturn's rings, a lonely human man heard it. His name was Dr. Adrian Wells. He was a medical specialist who had once saved thousands of lives. But after a personal loss, he had left Earth. Now he worked alone, fixing broken machines more than broken people. But that message, that quiet, shaking voice, reached deep inside him. It wasn't just the words. It was the way she said them, like she had already lost everything except a tiny piece of hope. Adrian replayed the message again and again. He tried to trace the signal's origin. He worked for hours without rest, checking old star maps, digging through forgotten channels. When he finally found the location, he couldn't believe it. It came from a colony that had cut itself off from the galaxy years ago, a place where outsiders were not welcome. Still, he packed his medical kit, climbed into his old ship, and set course toward the forgotten world. Everyone told him not to go. Too dangerous, they said. Too far. Too strange, too unwelcoming. But Adrian had already made up his mind. He couldn't stop thinking about that voice. It took 4 days of hyperspace travel, dodging meteors and crossing wormholes. He finally reached the edge of the alien colony's orbit. Darkness surrounded the place, and even his ship's lights seemed to fade as he approached. He landed on a rusty platform with no one there to greet him, just silence and cold wind. As he stepped out, his boots clanked against the metal, echoing in the emptiness. The buildings looked like hollow shells, broken and forgotten. Suddenly, a group of tall aliens appeared, wearing silver masks and robes. They looked at him with blank faces, showing no emotion. "What are you doing here, human?" one of them asked in a deep voice. "I came because of a signal," Adrian said calmly. "A girl needs help." "No one here asked for help," the alien replied sharply. "Go back." But Adrian didn't move. He knew what he had heard. "She sent a message," he said again, louder this time. "I heard her. She's still alive." The aliens looked at each other, then finally moved aside. "Follow the lower tunnel," one of them said coldly. "You'll find your patient there. But don't expect gratitude." Adrian walked down a long, narrow tunnel lit by flickering blue lights. The air was heavy, filled with the smell of old wires and chemicals. At the end of the path, he found a door slightly open. He stepped inside and saw her. Kalira lay on a floating bed, her body weak, her legs thin and unmoving. Machines beeped slowly around her, barely keeping her alive. Her eyes opened when she heard the footsteps. When she saw Adrian, her eyes widened with fear, but also curiosity. "You're human," she whispered, "and you're the bravest girl I've ever heard." Adrian said softly, walking toward her. He sat beside her and opened his medical kit. "I'm here now, and I won't leave you." Kalira looked at him with silent tears, not from pain, but from something she had forgotten. The feeling of being seen, being cared for. but outside in the shadows. The Council of Masked Aliens watched. They didn't want the human there. They didn't want the girl to remember what they had done. And they were ready to make sure she never walked again. Asterisk. She had never been touched by kindness before, not by her own people, not since the accident, not until the human arrived. Dr. Adrian Wells stood beside Kalira, unsure if she feared him or feared hope. Her fragile body trembled as he reached for her hand. Not to scan it, not to inject medicine, just to hold it. Kalira flinched at first, not used to warmth that didn't come with pain. Her people believed emotions were a weakness. Touch was rarely shared and never gentle. But the human's hand was calm, steady, and full of something she didn't understand, compassion. "You don't have to be afraid," Adrian said, his voice soft but steady. "I'm here to help." For a long moment, she said nothing, just stared at his face, trying to understand what made this stranger come so far. What did he see in someone her own people had left to die? Adrian began examining the alien tech around her bed. The machines were advanced, but cold. They monitored her life, but did not try to save it. Wires ran through her nerves, suppressing pain but also locking her body in place. Whoever set up this system wasn't trying to heal her. They were trying to keep her quiet. "This isn't treatment," Adrian muttered. "This is imprisonment." Kalira looked away, ashamed. "They said it was better this way," she whispered. "So I wouldn't suffer, or so they wouldn't feel guilty," Adrian replied, unplugging one of the wires. An alarm beeped briefly, but he silenced it. He started scanning her with his portable human tech, clunky, older, but honest. To his surprise, her muscles weren't entirely dead. They were weak, yes, but not beyond recovery. Someone had shut down her nerves deliberately. Her body wanted to heal, but it had been stopped. Kalira gasped, feeling a sudden pulse in her leg, something she hadn't felt in months. What did you do?" she asked, eyes wide. "I turned off what was holding you back," Adrian said, giving her a reassuring smile. "Your body still remembers how to fight." Outside the room, a silent camera recorded everything. The alien council was watching, and they were not pleased. This human doctor was digging too deep, and Kalira was waking up later that night. Adrian stayed by her side, feeding her warm broth and telling her stories from Earth. He spoke of cities in the sky, oceans that roared like thunder, and music that made people cry with joy. Kalira listened with wonder, forgetting the pain for a moment. She had never heard anyone speak like this, not just with words, but with heart. "Why are you doing this?" she asked him suddenly. "You don't even know me." Adrian paused, then looked at her. "Because someone once saved me when I was broken," he said, "and it changed everything." She didn't ask more, but she understood. There was sadness behind his eyes, and strength too, and something else. A connection forming between two very different beings, both wounded, both alone. But not anymore. As the days passed, Kalira slowly began to move her fingers, then her arms. Adrian modified the machines to support her healing, not her silence. They laughed quietly sometimes, shared small smiles, and even moments of silence that felt safe, not empty. But danger was growing in the shadows. The alien council feared what Adrian might uncover. They had buried the truth for a reason. If Kalira remembered what really happened, if she walked again, their lies would fall apart. Late one night, as Adrian was sleeping on the floor beside her bed, Kalira looked at him. For the first time, she didn't see a stranger. She saw a protector, a light in her darkness. She didn't understand all the emotions building inside her, but one thing was clear. The touch she once feared had become the only thing keeping her alive. But just as hope was starting to rise, a secret message was sent from the council chambers. "The human knows too much," it read. "Prepare to remove him." The first time her leg moved, it wasn't from the medicine. It was from a memory. Kalira gasped as a sharp image flashed behind her eyes. Not a dream, not a vision, a memory, hidden deep inside her blood. She saw a bright room, voices. Shouting, machines humming, and a hand reaching out toward her. Before everything went dark, Adrian rushed to her side, holding her trembling shoulders. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're safe now." But Kalira wasn't sure anymore. She didn't know what was real, and why the memory felt so. Forbiddens, later that night, while Kalira slept, Adrian studied the scans he took of her nervous system. He wasn't just a doctor. He was a scientist too, and something about her biology didn't add up. Her DNA was unlike anything he had seen, not just alien but layered. Like a story written inside her cells. He ran deeper analysis, breaking down her blood samples. Then he found it. A strange glowing pattern in the blood cells, like data. Hidden in her genes, it wasn't random, it was organized. Encrypted and old, someone had stored information inside her very body, and Kalira didn't even know it. "What are you hiding?" Adrian whispered, staring at the results. His hands shook as he activated the decryption process. The computer screen blinked, loading ancient images and strange alien codes. But one message was in clear language, repeating again and again, "I was never meant to survive." Adrian leaned back in his chair, stunned. This wasn't just a medical case. This was a cover-up. Kalira hadn't simply fallen. She had been erased. When she woke up, Adrian didn't tell her everything right. Away, he just sat with her and gently asked, "Kalira, do you remember anything about your accident?" She frowned, confused. "I was told it was a fall," she said quietly. "An energy storm hit the lab, and I don't remember after that." Adrian nodded slowly. "That's what they told you," he said. "But your blood says something else." He showed her the decrypted images. Kalira watched in silence, her eyes wide as she saw images from a hidden camera. Herself, standing inside a lab, arguing with someone. A glowing core was in her hand, unstable and dangerous then. An explosion. But it wasn't caused by her. Someone else triggered it and locked her inside. She turned her face away, trying not to cry. "They wanted me gone," she whispered. "They were afraid of what I discovered." Adrian placed a hand gently on hers. "Whatever it was, it's still inside you," he said. "They didn't succeed." Kalira looked down at her hands, her fingers now able to move more freely. Her recovery was speeding up, not just because of Adrian's help, but because the truth was waking something inside her. Strength, memory, purpose. But not everyone wanted those memories to return. Back in the council chamber, the elders reviewed the data breach. Someone had accessed the locked genetic archives, and only one being could do that. "Kalira, she's recovering faster than we expected," one of them said. "And the human?" asked another. "He knows too much," the leader replied coldly. "Prepare the termination order." Meanwhile, Adrian and Kalira worked together in secret. He began building a neural reconnector to help awaken more of her blocked memories. Each time she used it, her body responded, her legs twitched, her back straightened, her voice grew stronger. But with each memory came pain and fear. She remembered hidden meetings, strange devices, and an experiment her people had tried to bury. Something about merging alien and artificial minds. She was part of that test. Maybe the only survivor. She hadn't just been injured. She had been silenced. Adrian stayed close, guiding her through the flashes of her past. He never pushed, never judged, and with each step, Kalira found herself trusting him more, not just as a doctor, but as the one soul who believed in her when no one else did. Late one evening, as they sat beside the lab window, watching the slow meteor shower pass across the sky, Kalira asked quietly, "Do you think I'll ever walk again?" Adrian turned to her, eyes full of quiet fire. "I don't just think," he said. "I believe." She smiled softly, but her heart was heavy, because deep down she knew something was coming, something dark. Her blood had spoken, and now, so would those who wanted it silenced forever. Asterisk, the truth didn't come with a warning. It came with a whisper, hidden in Kalira's dreams and buried in files no one was ever meant to open. And now, it was too late to unlearn it. She wasn't just a victim, she was a witness. a living proof of something her people would kill to keep secret. Kalira sat quietly as Dr. Adrian patched the wires across the memory device. Her legs had begun responding to movement tests, but it wasn't just her body healing anymore. It was her mind. Every memory that returned brought a piece of herself back, and what she saw frightened her more than any injury ever had. "I remember the chamber," she whispered. "The energy core, the experiment, and the voices." She closed her eyes, breathing slowly. "They told me I had seen too much, that I had to forget, that if I couldn't forget, I would be removed." Adrian looked up from his work, shocked. "You mean they erased your memory on purpose?" Kalira nodded, her voice trembling. "I was part of Project Ethermind, a secret plan to merge alien minds with synthetic intelligence." Her eyes met his, wide with fear and clarity. "I was the first to connect to the system, and I saw something they didn't want anyone to know." She didn't remember what she saw, not yet, but the moment she accessed it, the explosion happened. It wasn't a malfunction. It was a cover-up. "They tried to kill me," she said softly. "And when I didn't die, they locked me away." Adrian stood still, trying to process the weight of it all. This wasn't just medical. It was political, dangerous, deadly. "We need evidence," he said. "Something we can use to expose them." Kalira hesitated, then said, "There is one place, the old vault beneath the council hall, where they keep all memory records, even the ones they try to delete." It was risky, maybe impossible, but Adrian had come this far, and he wasn't about to walk away. He nodded. "Then we break in." That night, they moved silently through the lower tunnels of the colony. Kalira wore a cloak to hide her identity, and Adrian carried a compact data extractor in his medical pouch. They avoided patrols, passed through forgotten corridors, and finally reached a thick metal door sealed by biometric codes. Kalira placed her hand on the panel. It didn't open. Then she took a deep breath, focused her mind, and let the memory stream activate inside her blood. The system recognized her genetic signature. One the council thought was erased. The door slid open with a cold hiss. Inside were thousands of glowing data orbs, floating gently in air like frozen memories. Adrian scanned them quickly, looking for anything labeled Ethermind. He found one, small, dim, and nearly corrupted. He loaded it into the extractor. But just as he did, the alarms triggered, red lights flashed, and a cold robotic voice echoed through the vault. "Unauthorized access detected. Security dispatched." Kalira's eyes widened. "They're coming." Adrian grabbed her hand, and they ran, back through the tunnels, hearts racing, as footsteps and drones chased behind them. At one point, Kalira tripped, but this time, she didn't fall. Her legs held, just enough to keep running. They reached their small hidden lab and locked the entrance, both out of breath. Adrian plugged in the data orb. It began to play the hidden recording. On screen, a group of alien leaders sat around a glowing table. One of them said clearly, "She accessed the central mind. She knows what's behind the veil. If she speaks, it will destroy us." Another voice replied, "Then silence her. Permanently." Kalira turned away, tears sliding down her cheeks. These were her people, her leaders. They didn't just abandon her. They tried to erase her like a mistake. Adrian placed a hand gently on her back. "You were right to survive," he said. "Now we fight for the truth." But outside the lab, heavy boots marched toward them. The council had sent elite guards, and this time they were not coming to warn. They were coming to end what should have ended long ago. Sometimes survival isn't about strength. It's about how fast you can run when everything is chasing you. And this time everything was. Kalira and Dr. Adrian stood frozen as the lab lights flickered red. The sound of boots echoed down the corridor. A full squad of armored enforcers was coming, not to arrest them, but to erase them. "Take only the core files," Adrian said quickly, shoving tools into his bag. "We leave everything else." Kalira pulled off the last cable from the memory console. She had never felt her heart beat this fast, but she wasn't afraid. not like before. Her body was remembering what it meant to fight back. They moved fast, slipping through the rear tunnel of the lab. Behind them, a small charge Adrian had planted exploded, blinding the security cameras for just a few seconds. It was enough. Kalira limped slightly, but her legs were stronger than before. Each step burned, but she didn't stop. Not this time. "We can't go to the surface," she said, panting. "The council will be waiting." Adrian nodded. "Then we go lower." They turned toward the abandoned gravity shafts beneath the colony, a part of the city built before her people lost their courage. Dust filled the air, and broken machines sparked faint blue lights across the walls. Every hallway felt like a memory lost to time. "This place hasn't been touched in years," Kalira whispered. "It's where people go when they've been forgotten," Adrian replied, "which makes it perfect for us." As they moved deeper, they reached a sealed chamber once used for ship repairs. In the center was a rusted, half-functioning escape pod, shaped like a silver teardrop. Kalira's eyes lit up. "This is my father's old ship," she said softly, running her hand across the cracked hull. "He used to take me flying when I was a child. Do you think it still works?" Adrian asked. "It has to," she said, already climbing in. As Adrian began rerouting the power systems, Kalira stared at the stars through the small glass window. She had once believed she would die in this cold world, unseen and unloved. Now she was running for her life, and for something more. Freedom, truth, and him. Adrian finished the ignition reboot, just as another explosion rocked the chamber door. "Time's up," he said. "We're flying or we're dying." Kalira gritted her teeth and pulled the lever. The ship shook violently, but the engines hummed to life with a burst of white light. The pod launched through the old shaft, breaking through layers of rock and metal. Behind them, the colony shrank into the distance, swallowed by silence. For the first time in months, Kalira breathed freely. She wasn't trapped anymore. She wasn't forgotten. But just as they reached orbit, a giant shadow fell over them. A warship, dark and wide, hovered above, bearing the mark of the High Council. A voice crackled through the radio. "Return the fugitive and the stolen data, or be destroyed." Kalira turned to Adrian. "They'll shoot us down." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "Then we don't let them aim." He swerved the pod sharply, sending it into a tight spiral, dodging the first plasma shot. The ship shook violently, warning lights blinking across the dashboard. Kalira grabbed the navigation stick, her hands remembering old patterns from childhood flights. They flew together, weaving between debris fields and frozen satellites. A dance between death and escape. Behind them, the warship hesitated. It didn't expect resistance, certainly not from a broken girl and a human doctor. Kalira's voice cracked through the coms, not to plead, but to declare, "You tried to erase me, but I remember now, and I will speak." No reply came, but the warship stopped firing as they flew into deep space. Kalira collapsed into her seat, breathless but smiling. "We made it," she whispered. Adrian looked at her with something more than relief. "I never doubted you." In the quiet of space, far from their enemies, Kalira felt something she had almost forgotten existed. Hope, real, shining hope. But the war wasn't over. This was just the beginning, because now the galaxy had to hear her truth. Asterisk freedom came quietly, not with cheers or victory, but with a single question. What now? Kalira asked it as she stared out the pod's cracked window. The stars didn't answer. They just watched, like they always had. Silent, distant, ancient. Adrian sat beside her, his hand still gripping the control stick. He hadn't slept since the escape, not because he was afraid, but because he knew the real danger was still coming. The warship had fallen back, but not given up. They would return, and this time they'd bring more than threats. Kalira's fingers brushed the glowing memory chip they had stolen from the vault. Inside it lived the truth, proof of Project Ethermind, evidence of betrayal, of experiments, of lies. It could change everything, or destroy them both. "We can't run forever," she said softly. But I won't hide anymore. Adrian looked at her, his eyes tired but steady. Then we find someone who'll listen. They landed on Vera's 9, a neutral moon where all species were welcome, or at least tolerated. The city was built from wreckage of old wars, its towers twisted and beautiful, a place for outlaws, dreamers, and survivors. It was perfect. They rented a small room above an old shop, hidden behind flashing neon lights. Kalira moved slowly, using a brace to walk. But she walked. Every step was pain, but also proof. Adrian uploaded fragments of the council's secrets to a private network used by journalists and rebel cells. But days passed, and no one replied. Too dangerous, too big, too many afraid to speak. Then a message arrived. Not text, not video, just a sound, footsteps, and a voice. I heard your story, said a tall alien figure as he entered their hideout. My sister died in Ether Mind. Kalira stood, heart racing. You were part of it? No, he said, but I believe the lies. His name was Zan, a former security officer who once served the High Council. Now he served the truth. And he wasn't alone. More came. Quiet voices, scared eyes, carrying pain of their own. Scientists, medics, even soldiers who had seen too much and said too little. They gathered, listened, and finally believed. Kalira shared her memories, showed them the files. She didn't speak with anger. She spoke with calm strength, not just a victim, but a witness. Adrian watched as she grew, not just stronger in body, but in spirit. He knew he would protect her no matter the cost. But what he didn't expect was her wanting to protect him too. That night, as he repaired her damaged brace, Kalira sat beside him and said, If anything happens to me, promise me you'll finish the story. Adrian paused, looked at her and said, No, if anything happens to me, you finish it. They didn't speak after that. They didn't need to. The silence between them had changed. It wasn't emptiness anymore, it was understanding. But peace never stays for long. The next morning, their hideout shook. A council drone had traced their signal. Explosions followed, tearing through the walls. People screamed, scattered. Some fought back, others fled. Adrian grabbed the core files, but a blast knocked him down. His leg twisted sharply. Pain shooting through his body, he tried to stand and failed. Kalira didn't run. She turned back, pulled him up, placed his arm over her shoulders. Together, they moved through fire and falling debris. For the first time, she carried him, step by step, breath by breath. The healer was now the one being saved. They barely escaped, reaching an old tram tunnel that led into the underground rail. Zan and the others covered their exit, holding off council drones with stolen weapons and broken hope in the darkness of the tunnel. Adrian leaned against the wall, his face pale with pain. You should have gone without me, he whispered. Kalira looked at him fiercely. I would rather crawl with you than fly alone. They had risked everything, lost safety, lost time, nearly lost each other. But the truth was free now. The rebellion had begun, and freedom, real, lasting freedom, always comes with a price. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like quiet, like the moment after a storm, when the world is still broken, but breathing. Kalira stood on the edge of a silver plateau, wind brushing her face, stars glowing above her. She wasn't running anymore. She wasn't hiding. She had survived, and now she had something even rarer than freedom, a future. Adrian sat behind her, his legs still recovering, his face tired but calm. He had built them a small shelter using parts from the escape pod and scattered tech from the old city ruins. Not much, but enough. They were safe here on Alara 3, a peaceful moon far beyond council patrols. No one ruled, no one asked questions. It was home for the lost, the quiet, the rebuilding. Kalira's body was stronger now. But the real change was deeper. She no longer looked at herself as damaged. She saw scars and strength, pain and power. Adrian watched her with quiet admiration. Every step she took reminded him why he had come in the first place. Not just to save her, but to find something that made life worth living again, together. They built a small medical hut at the edge of a canyon. They didn't charge credits or ask for ID. They just helped whoever came. Alien, hybrid, machine, runaway, orphan. It didn't matter. Everyone left better than they arrived. People began to whisper of the human healer and the girl with the glowing eyes. Some said they were rebels. Some said they were legends. Kalira didn't care what they said. She only cared that she could finally give back, one night after treating a sick child with half-metal lungs. Adrian sat beside the fire and looked at Kalira. "You know," he said, "if someone had told me years ago that I'd end up on a forgotten moon with an alien girl who once tried to bite me, I wouldn't have believed them." Kalira smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "And if someone told me a human would be the only person in the galaxy who saw me as more than a patient, I'd think they were insane." They laughed. The kind of laughter that only survivors know, soft, earned, real. But even in peace, there were ripples. News began to spread, slowly but steadily. The stolen data from Project Ethermind had reached more systems. Protests started on distant worlds. Council members were questioned. Secrets were leaking. Change had begun, and Kalira's story was at its center. She didn't want fame. She didn't want revenge. She just wanted the truth to live longer than the lies. Adrian once said healing others had healed him too. Now Kalira understood what he meant. Helping others didn't erase her pain, but it gave it purpose, and that made it bearable one evening. As red moons rose above the cliffs, Kalira brought Adrian a small stone she had carved. It had two symbols on it, one for her people and one for Earth. She placed it near the door of the hut, pressing it into the soil. Adrian looked at her, confused. "What does it mean?" he asked. She smiled, her voice gentle. "It means this place belongs to both of us." And in that quiet moment, with stars above and peace around them, they knew they hadn't just escaped. They hadn't just survived. They had built something new, together. And somewhere in the galaxy, a once disabled alien girl now walked beside a human doctor she had once feared, then trusted, and finally loved, not as a patient, not as a symbol, but as herself, free, whole, and home.